So let's get right into it. What if there was an ancient text, written centuries ago, that claims to have predicted not just India's past, but its entire future? Well, today we're digging into the Bhavishya Malika, a collection of prophecies that some people believe is literally unfolding right before our eyes.
And this is the core claim, right here. Just imagine, palm leaf manuscripts written down over 500 years ago, supposedly holding what the author called the truth of tomorrow. It's a pretty wild idea, and it immediately makes you ask one thing.
And that's the big question, isn't it? The one we're exploring today. Are these ancient prophecies actually coming to pass? To even start answering that, we've got to go back to the source and figure out who even wrote this stuff. Right, so who's the mind behind these incredible claims? For that, we need to travel back to the 16th century and meet the author. These prophecies are all credited to a man named Achyutananda Das. He was a revered sage from Odisha back in the 1500s. And the story goes that he was a great yogi, someone who, in a deep state of meditation, could literally see the future, and he wrote down those visions for the rest of us. So the Bhavishya Malika, it's not just one book, it's a whole collection of these writings. And what really adds to the mystique is the claim that the original manuscripts are still around, preserved and protected at the famous Jagannath Puri temple. But visions are one thing. What about proof? Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. The supporters of the Malika point to a whole series of major historical events that the text supposedly predicted with, frankly, stunning accuracy. Now, check out this timeline. The text, written back in the 16th century, apparently foretold the entire sequence of who would rule India. First the Mughals, then the British would arrive, and eventually India would gain its independence and go through the painful partition. For a lot of people, this historical accuracy is what gives the text all its credibility. But it gets way more specific than that. The Malika lists out several very distinct signs that were supposed to happen at the Jagannath temple itself. Like a stone falling from the building, the main flag catching on fire, even the iconic blue wheel on top bending. And according to followers, all of these things have actually happened in recent memory. And this is the real kicker. The text uses these fulfilled prophecies not just to prove it's the real deal, but as a warning. It's basically saying, hey, when you see all this stuff happen, you need to understand that something way, way bigger is coming. Which brings us to the absolute core of the Bhavishya Malika's message for our time. A really stark and dramatic warning about a global catastrophe that's on its way. And the prophecy doesn't mince words. It is totally unambiguous. It states a third world war is inevitable. It doesn't say it might happen. It says it will definitely happen. And this war, according to the text, is going to be so devastating, it will reshape humanity on a scale that's, well, it's hard to even imagine. Just look at these numbers. The world's population would plummet from around 8 billion people today to just 640 million survivors. That's over 90% of all people gone. The prophecy then zooms right in on India. It says that out of those 640 million survivors worldwide, a massive chunk of them, 31 crore, or 310 million, will be in India. This would basically make India the center of a post-catastrophe world. But with a prediction that dark hanging over everyone, you have to ask, is there any hope? Because here's the thing. The Malika isn't just a book of doom and gloom. After laying out this terrifying vision, it also claims to offer a clear path to survival, kind of like a blueprint for who actually makes it through the Great Destruction. So, who gets to survive? Well, according to this quote, it has nothing to do with wealth or power. Survival is reserved for people who are devoted to a divine path. The text says God will save them in the form of seeds, which means they'll become the foundation for a new, better humanity that will repopulate the earth. And the text gets super specific about the actions needed for this path. It talks about righteous conduct, service to cows, which are seen as sacred, and service to Brahmins, the traditional spiritual class. But above all, it stresses the constant chanting and remembrance of God's name. It's a spiritual checklist for survival, not a physical one. So what happens after the storm passes? Well, the Bhavishya Malika then paints this picture of a world completely reborn, a total reset for humanity. After all the destruction, a new golden age, or a Satyug, is prophesied to begin, and this era of peace, dharma, which you can think of as righteous living, and prosperity is supposed to last for 1,000 years as the survivors rebuild civilization from the ground up.
The text also says this new age will be ushered in under the influence of Lord Kalki, who is prophesied as the final incarnation of the Hindu deity Vishnu. His role isn't to fight in the war, but to show up after the destruction to reestablish order and righteous living, dharma, on Earth.
So, as we start to wrap this up, what's the ultimate takeaway here? I mean, how are we supposed to interpret these incredibly dramatic prophecies today? The most crucial point, which the source material itself emphasizes, is that this is not meant to be a story to make you afraid. It's presented as a warning, a spiritual wake-up call. It argues that for every single prophecy of destruction, there's another one right next to it about salvation.
And this slide really captures that central message perfectly. You have this serpent of time, which is a metaphor for this coming doom, and it can only be beaten by one thing: spiritual focus and devotion. That's the consistent theme from the very first page to the last. And in the end, the Bhavishya Malika leaves us with this final, very introspective question. Regardless of whether you believe a single word of these prophecies, the message is a call for inner peace and patience, especially in crazy times. It asks, oh mind, why not have patience? And that's pretty timeless advice, whether you're facing a prophesied apocalypse or just the challenges of everyday life.